What harmful things are being taught to children? Not owning up to their mistakes or blaming them on others. What to think instead of how to think. How to internalize stress and implode as teens and adults. True story, my parents used to make fun of me when I cried. They even created a mock song to sing whenever I started crying, so guess what? I stopped crying. 27 years later, I can't cry at all and I can't tell others about my stress levels without getting upset. BTW, my parents are really nice people, but I was their first child in the early 90s, so they didn't really know how to deal with a crying child. BTW, my parents are really nice people, but I was their first child in the early 90s, so they didn't really know how to deal with a crying child. Parents can be really nice people, but in the end, they are just humans too. I don't think anyone can say that they have the perfect parents who never did mistakes. I know a lot of people always say, well, I would never do as a parent if I was a parent, but then they do something else what is also stupid. Being flawed is being human. In a nasty divorce, the parents may only talk about each other's bad qualities and the kids may have issues with their parents. Yeah, my parents, especially my mom, only ever say you're just like your other parent when it's something negative. Led to some serious self-esteem issues that I am still trying to work through into adulthood. That failure is bad. Failing should not be considered as an obstacle but a step in the learning process. Demonizing the failure and stigma associated with it makes many children lose their interest once they fail. This but also the humiliation that comes with failing. If failure is to be considered a learning process, then people need to be taught not to laugh at the people who have failed. Not just the humiliation, but also the shame associated with failure. That they shouldn't question an adult. So true, because of that logic many kids think that every adult is responsible and trustworthy when in reality it's clearly not the case. It was a really weird thing going through college because I began to think more for myself and question adults. It makes you realize how complicated the world is because as a kid you assume exactly as you've said. It was almost jarring to realize that my parents did not, in fact, know everything. It did take a lot of pressure off of me to learn everything in order to be an adult. I didn't know until then that I felt that way. It's so weird. Being wrong is bad. That's why many people don't change their mind when they were given trustable sources. They don't want to be wrong. If you want to always be right, change your mind. CGP Great Edit. Thank you for the Take My Energy Awards. First awards. High school teacher here, this all damn day. So many kids don't do anything because they're afraid of making a mistake. How else are you going to learn? It's really sad seeing a kid get so relaxed when I say, mistakes are okay. You are a good teacher. Keep it up. You do not have to play with everyone. There is a total lack of social accountability. If Laura is always cheating at tag, it's okay to not let her play. If little Billy throws sand in the sandbox, little Timmy does not have to play with him. Laura and Billy need to learn how to play appropriately. My son's preschool has a strict you do not have to play if you don't want to policy. No one has to play with anyone they don't want to play with. No one has to hug or touch anyone or be touched if they don't want it. No one has to share their toys or other school supplies if they aren't done with it. In fact, the preschool teacher will go over and referee and say, "Is Bobby done with the toy car?" No. Then Mikey, you have to wait until he is done. It's pretty refreshing. I wanted to let you know there are new philosophies and my son's preschool really strongly teaches body autonomy. Your body is your own and no one can touch it or make you do anything with it without your permission. It was an official policy, but we had a lot of discretion in the daycare I worked at. I did almost all the things you listed in the post. Some of it was a conscious effort and some of it was natural. I remember at first seeing the surprise on the 3-year-old's faces when I said no, Timmy does not have to give you the toy. And wouldn't you know, a week into the routine and the kids wouldn't fight. I think telling kids that you can just walk up and take something because sharing causes more fights. They are tiny humans and they deserve to have some agency. Saying no to unwanted touch, saying no to other kids who are bothering them and not telling them to get along, and I had the best behaved class. Anecdotal, but I know it mattered. Gosh, I love this. I have a toddler and we're trying to teach about taking turns rather than sharing. My sister is always telling her little boy to share, so when my daughter snatches something from him, I tell her often that it's not her turn and she has to wait, but my sister tells her little boy often tells him to share his toys and let my daughter have a turn. No, he doesn't have to share anything. He doesn't have to just give her a turn because she demands it. They generally give each other toys, but their favorites or the ones they're playing with don't have to automatically be shared. It's so difficult to have different parenting. Happened to my son in middle school. A kid sucker punched my son. My son then fought back and pinned the kid against the wall. He has long arms, and punched him a few times. The school called me and my wife and told us our son was suspended. We went to the school and they said even though multiple witnesses as well as the kid said he threw the first punch that the school had a zero-tolerance policy so our son would be suspended. We asked what the school believed our son should have done and they said he should just walk away. We told them that he would not be receiving any punishment at home and that the policy was ducked up. That's for their insurance policies. They don't give a damn what happens to the kids in that scenario as long as they don't get sued. That's a bingo. No backtalk. Many adults use it as you're not allowed to challenge what I have to say. Makes sense if it's a cranky toddler being negative for negativity's sake, but suddenly older children can't question things or raise valid points of their own. Grew up with a parent who was a lawyer. I was always allowed to argue my point. There were many times where she still won because she was the parent in the situation. But she would always justify why and I could always make my case. And sometimes I won too. My husband was raised to react when mom and dad say jump, you say how high. His parents still say jump and are now pissed that my husband is a grown-ass man and has his own family and ideas and needs and they can't reconcile it. All toddlers are mini lawyers anyway. They'll cross-examine and challenge every single rule you set as a parent. Teaching them that it's not okay to fail. Some people need a little more time than others. It's okay to not get something now. Kids should be given more time to process things. Imagine having a poor grade because of a low score from the beginning of the year. How can we show children that it's not pass or fail, it's try and improve? Children to learn about sex at a young age, it just isn't usually in a productive way. I know I did. My own experience. Questions like this are why I believe in being infinitely clear with my kids. You are going to hear total crap from other kids. If you hear something you don't understand, come talk to me. You can ask me anything and expect a decent answer. And I would give examples of the total crap I had heard as a kid, most of which would result in pregnancy. Son, age 6. Daughter, age 7. Riding home from school. Daughter says Tiffany said she had sex with my brother. Which left me a grand total of 3 minutes to gather my wits before we got home. Okay, do you guys know what sex is? Blank looks. Sex is when you take off all of your clothes and rub privates together. You can make babies that way. Looks of shock and disgust. Do you think your brother had sex with Tiffany? No. I think she was using a really bad way of trying to say she likes him, and maybe she watches the wrong TV shows where if people like each other they always have sex. Were my kids really ready for a sex talk? No, not really. They didn't care. Did we really need to have one about then? Yep. My job as a parent is to be there to put things that come up in context for them, not run around after them deciding what and when they need to know things. This is something I will always stand firm on. If the child is old enough to ask the question, they are old enough to know the answer. Do you need to sit down and draw a diagram and pull out textbooks when they're 7? Probably not. But if they're asking questions about misinformation they're hearing from other kids, I'm going to do my best to be honest and answer in a way that they will, hopefully, be able to understand. I was in nursing school when my kids were little, and they loved looking through my textbooks. They'd ask questions, I'd give age-appropriate answers. We never had the talk, but it was just kind of ingrained into everyday conversation if something came up. The best was when my son, who was in 2nd grade, asked me what a boner was. My daughter, who had just had her first sex ed class in 5th grade, piped up and said, "Oh, I know. That's when a boy has a really happy dream and he ejaculates in his bed." Not only did I have to keep from laughing, I then had to explain erections and wet dreams. In the 3 minutes we had in the car, always in the car, before I dropped them off at school,